This lie you believe is like a dying tree, a tree that offers no comfort, no fuel, no shade, a tree that saps the strength and twists the values of all those who become entangled in its many and devious branches. If you continue to live your lives among the roots of this deceitful tree of war, you, like young Hiawatha there, will find the ravages of war entering into your very heart. Within your very soul will the battles rage as you are separated, as Hiawatha has been, from the inner peace that is the birthright of the real peoples. I am not a Mohawk, this you know, but neither am I the Huron you imagine now stands alone. I come from the tribe of the real people. I am Ogwehonwe. I represent the unseen ones, the winged ones of heaven. They are with me now. The breath of their spirit fills my body, and my voice carries their power. Together we beseech you for love of all that is sacred and true, for love of your families, your children, and your children's children. Leave the deceitful tree of war, and take weapons against your fellow men only in self-defense. Move your village under the great boughs of the living tree of peace. Men of the Mohawk nation, if you care for honor, if you care for truth, if your children are to grow up healthy and whole, cut this tree of violence from your hearts. We will cut this tree of violence from our hearts, all right, Hiawatha spat in anger. We will cut it here and now with you in it, to fall into the gorge where vulture, wolf, and panther will find what little nourishment a carcass like yours has to give. There was a rumble of assent from the gathered warriors. An elderly chief raised his hand for silence and said, Daganoweda, you have been using this very tree upon which you stand to tell us, your betters, what we must do with our lives. We do not need you to direct us. We choose what we will keep in our lives. We choose also what we will cut away. I think this time young Hiawatha has spoken wisely. We will indeed cut this tree away, he said, his face darkening, that you and your divisive words might fall with it into the gorge below, where they will trouble our people no more. Sharply he commanded several braves to begin cutting down the tree. But with lightning movement, before they could begin, I drew the tomahawk from my belt. Pointing with it to the darkened clouds above, I screamed a cry so savage and so terrible, it seemed to some of the Mohawks that it was my command that caused the sky at that moment to open and the rain to begin to fall in angry torrents. No, warriors of the Mohawk nation, I shouted through the fury of the wind-driven rain. It is I who have said the twisted tree of war must be cut from your lives. It is I who will cut away this tree and fall with it into the gorge. My act will give you a teaching that my words have not. No man should ever be afraid to cut falsehood from his life, even if it is the very thing upon which he is standing. Once he recognizes it, he should not fear to let it fall away, for to remain standing upon a lie, once it is known to be false, is to forswear future peace and joy, and there is no value in to living if such as these are your roots. With savage fury I began to hack away at the trunk of the tree upon which I stood. The Mohawks were amazed. They watched in silence while the rain poured. With the passion of battle upon me, I worked my weapon ceaselessly again and again in violent swings, each driving slash cutting deeper and deeper into the murky grain of the trunk. Nearly an hour passed, punctuated only by the falling rain and the sound of my tomahawk against the wood. I spoke no more until only a small section of the trunk remained. I knew that one or two more blows would sever the tree. I stood then for the first time since my fury was unleashed. This time the faces I saw wore a different expression. This they respected, this they understood. Like all who are attuned to the Great Spirit, my timing was in perfect harmony with the natural world, for at the very moment I stood, the sun broke through the clouds, and a rainbow appeared in an arc of brilliance across the valley behind me. I pointed to the circle of the sun. I pointed to the circle of the horizon. I spoke of the many complete circles of nature, the circle of the cycles of the moon, the circle of stars in the night sky, the circle of seasons, of fruit ripening on the vine, the circle of the honest and open eye. The truth is beautiful, I said. The truth is like a circle. Yet the rainbow you see behind me is not a full circle, but a half circle of 5 colored light tribes shining together in harmony. It appears today to remind the nations and the tribes of the Iroquois that we must complete the rainbow circle in our lives, through living in harmony with the earth and her creatures, through living in harmony with the laws of nature, and through living in peace with the other nations around us. Each tribe is like one of the colors you see before you that together compose the rainbow. Watch for a moment. Do you see where the colors touch and intermingle? This is the trade between tribes that live in peace. Where people honor the ways of the Great Spirit, new and more beautiful colors come into being. Through their exchange there is plenty for all. The rainbow has been given to us as a sign to remind us that we must become tribes living in harmony together on the earth. The rainbow is a half circle that we must complete in our hearts. Except for self-defense, there is no place for violence in a heart that honors the teachings of the Great Spirit. Remove such error from your lives as I now remove this tree from its false roots. And with that I leapt into the air and landed with my full weight upon the overhanging mass. There was a tremendous crack as the twisted oak broke loose from the cliff and tumbled, with me, clinging to its branches, end over end through empty space. The drop was over 100 feet, and the truth is, I had not before considered whether I should live or perish. The opportunity that had been presented to me to give that teaching was sufficient, I felt, to justify a lifetime. Whether I lived or died in that one body made no difference to me, for I knew that the people of the Mohawk would be more peaceful after what they had seen. I held tightly to the falling branches, feeling only gratitude for the perfect moment that held me in its heaven. As it happened, the falling tree landed in the upper branches of several closely growing trees in the gorge below. Though I was unable to maintain my hold in the collision, my fall was nevertheless broken by a succession of branches. In reality, it seemed to me these branches were the hands of the Great Spirit catching me in His love. I reached the ground with a few scratches, a bruise or two, and with triumph in my heart. As Providence would have it, as I was making the return journey of about 12 miles, circling back up the canyon to the Mohawk encampment, a large buck crossed my path and ended up arriving with me on my shoulders as I entered the village just at dusk, as dusk was falling. The Mohawks were silent as I entered the camp. I threw the buck to the ground at the edge of the fire, making it clear that it was my gift to the people of the camp. I waited, standing in silence, only for a moment, when the same elderly chief who just that afternoon had approved the method of my death gestured to me to be seated. I knew the worst of the resistance was past. In the feast that followed, my surmise proved correct. The Mohawks were now open to hearing my message. However, not one of the Flint people was touched so deeply as the Onondaga one, Hiawatha. His transformation was like the transformation of darkness into light.